Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Tuesday talk. I have my friend Margaret joining me today, and Margaret, I will have you introduce yourself here in just a moment.
Yep.
Pretty sure people know who you are, but I'm still going to have you introduce yourself. But before we get to that, we're going to do some housekeeping items. For those of you who are joining us live, thank you. And as you know, if you've joined one of these before, we love audience participation. So there's a Q&A button either at the top or bottom of your Zoom screen, depending on how you have it set up. Click on that button and a box pops up and you can type in a question. I will be watching that Q&A box as Margaret and I visit over the course of the next half hour, and we'll make sure that your question gets asked and answered as we are visiting. So again, love audience participation, so do not hesitate to ask us a question. Okay, Margaret, if you would please introduce yourself to our listeners today.
Yeah, so thanks, Jen. It's always a pleasure to join you. So, yes, I'm Margaret Haynes. I'm the CEO for Right at Home. Been with the company, gosh, it'll be 14 years in January. So, it's hard to believe.
Time flies when you're having
Yeah.
fun, Margaret. Uh, okay, so to put a timestamp on this conversation, it is Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. This is our final Tuesday talk of the year, which is wild to say out loud. What a year it has been. So let's just start with that. Let's talk about and thinking about the audience that's either watching this or listening to it right now. Um, let's talk about 2024 and maybe some of the highlights or greatest moments, things that you're incredibly proud of that happened here in 2024. Just kind of a recap on the year, which I know that is a very loaded question for you. Where do I start? You've got
Yeah.
30 minutes, but if you could just name a couple things that you'd like to highlight, that would be great.
Yeah, it is. We could talk for hours and hours. 2024 has been a really, really good year for Right at Home as a brand. And I just came off of Takeoff Tuesday, where there's lots of celebrations of just franchise owners getting recognized as Caring Star winners. And that means that they're just creating really good quality based, care driven, businesses in their local community. But when I think broadly about the whole network, gosh, there's so many great things that have happened this year. We've been all the metrics are moving in the right direction, up and to the right of the things that should be moving that way. And so we think a lot about hours, like how many hours of care are we providing in the local communities and across just the U.S. alone. We had a rally cry early in the year of we wanted to hit 450,000 hours. And I've probably talked about that on a prior one of these calls. But the significance of that number was that would represent the most hours in a single week, just in the US alone, not counting our other 5 countries that we're in, that we would have gone above any mark that was set prior in the history of Right at Home. And Right at Home gets to celebrate 30 years as a brand next year and 25 years in franchising. And so obviously we were on a growth. Then the pandemic hit, and we know that all industries had a decrease in what would have been their main, growth engines of us. It's ours. But then we built right back out of that through those years of coming back through the pandemic. So we had a rally cry of 450,000, and we thought, gosh, we'll probably hit that sometime later in the year. And we crushed that goal back in May of this year, and we have just left it in our rear view mirror. I call it, 450,000 is now like the new watermark that we're chasing.
Yep.
And so we've now just had the next highest peak, and we've celebrated several peaks since then. But just a couple weeks ago, we hit 465,000 and some odd hours of care in a single week. And that makes me so excited just because that means we are touching more lives in a really meaningful way. And that's what it's all about. But, so there's been lots of awards that the network, the brand has been recognized this year. And Jen, you could probably rattle off a ton of them as well. But as well as expanding our footprint and just so excited. We had a goal this year. You and your team were going to plant 24 new flags right across the U.S. And when we say new flags, that's just opening new territories where we didn't have a franchisee presence today. And again, crushed that goal, and have just left it in your rearview mirror. And we're now at 36, I think, or
Yep.
yeah. So it's just amazing to see. And I think it speaks to our industry as a whole, but also specifically to the Right at Home brand. We are just surpassing our competitors in lots of different ways in which you can measure that. But it's not so much that we care to surpass the competitors. I like a competitor in a market because it gives you something to
Yeah.
benchmark against.
Yep.
But when we think about it, it's just we just want to be the best brand and the best home care company in our industry. And we're doing that. And that just makes me really, really proud.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's a great way to put it as well. And I love how this up to this point now we've been talking here for 6 minutes, and all that you've really focused on really is just listen to how many hours of care we are providing to seniors and adults with disabilities. It's not the revenue, it's that, I mean, what's most important here is how many people we are providing care to, um, and all the wonderful franchise system that we have to do that. So a couple more questions for you. What if you could pinpoint a couple things? What has contributed to that growth in hours? So you said, back at COVID, of course COVID, and that,
Yeah.
there was a dip, and we've been kind of moving back from that. But what would you say, one or two things that contributes to that increase of hours?
Yeah, I think that, there's obviously lots of different things that go into play there, but I think we have been focusing a lot around, in for one perspective, being that employer of choice in the local market. So we share tons of best practices. We've used different tools like applicant tracking systems and different things that we have a new system that we rolled out this year that's around engagement between that caregivers that's out in the home, and how can you kind of improve the communications back with the office so that they
Yep.
don't feel like they're so alone. I think all those things around how can we in the market, in each individual market, each individual franchise owner, how can they have such a great culture in their own office that when a caregiver has hours to work, because the caregivers just want to work, right? If
Yeah.
they have hours to work, the first brand that they want to reach out to is like, I want to check with my local Right at Home first and see if they've got hours for me because they respect me and treat me well. And, I have a good working relationship with them, all those things. And we talk about micro experiences. So, how can you create such great micro experiences with every engagement that you have with that caregiver? How do you hire really good staff to work in your local office? And so we have all that, the best practices and coaching and tricks, tricks and tips, I
Yep.
should say. I'm trying to combine the words there that help do that. So I think it is around the caregivers, right? We see, as I said, all the metrics kind of moving in the right upwards and to the right direction, new caregivers choosing to work for Right at Home, and the retention of caregivers across the brand, all of those are moving in the right direction. And that means that we've got more individuals out there that can provide that care to those seniors and disabled adults. I think it also is just the tenacity and the great owners that we have across the network. I mean, we have incredibly passionate owners in our local communities that are focused on living out the mission, and they recognize that as a business owner, if your business isn't growing, it's actually declining. And so they're engaged with us, they're involved in programs that we offer. They come to the annual meeting and in performance groups and other things, and all that engagement and collaboration allows them to absorb best practices and share their best practices, but allows them to work on their business and continue to grow it versus just in it. And we see, offices all performing, very well in terms of their own growth goals and hitting the goals that they've been setting for themselves. So it's really
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Okay. So a couple obvious things that I want to point out to
Okay.
what you just said, to kind of summarize what you said. And I kind of set you up for that question because I kind of knew how you were going to answer it, and you answered it just perfectly.
Okay.
But when I asked you, like, what contribute to the increase in hours? So think about our franchise owners running their business. Each one, increased, their business by, providing more services to more clients. But that's not where you went. That's not how you answered. It wasn't, focus on getting more clients and that's going to get more hours. You went to, which, of course, inside sales, outside sales, that's part of the equation.
Right.
You went directly to the caregivers. So making sure, like, we want caregivers to choose us as their place of employment. And then taking it a step further, making sure that those caregivers have a wonderful experience being employed by right at home franchise owners. Because
Mm-hmm.
that then eventually turns into, more clients, more
Right.
hours. It's a domino effect.
Yeah.
But then finally, a very, very big part of this equation are the franchise owners themselves being highly engaged, taking advantage of all the tools and the resources that then eventually creates a thriving business and better relationships with everyone here, with your caregivers, with your staff, with your clients, their families, which then creates more hours, for our franchise owners. So
Yeah.
it all kind of pieces together. Okay, so let's look ahead into the future. So 2025 is just a couple weeks away. And we're going to kick off the year with a new Tuesday talk to get excited about the year. But before we do that, if you could talk about a couple things looking ahead just to 2025, something that you're the most excited about, whether it's regarding the home care industry, regarding our franchise system, anything that you can think of, caregivers, hours, anything that excites you about 2025 as we look ahead to the near future here.
Yeah, so again, I could talk for hours and hours about what excites me about the future, just like I can talk a lot about all the successes that we've had. But one that I think is really, really timely is around the industry. And I'm really excited for, I've been sitting as the chair of the board for our association in our industry called the Home Care Association of America, or HCAOA. We like lots of acronyms, and so we typically use the acronym. Um, but over the years, and again this year, we've been constantly advocating at a state and federal level around the benefit of home care and being able to provide those services and having some of the entitlement programs help support individuals that want to stay in their home. And a great example is veterans. And we, as a brand, love supporting veterans, right? We this year had a whole campaign and did different things like at our annual meeting and whatnot to support veterans in general.
Yep.
Um, and then we're lucky to have veterans that are franchise owners as well as veterans that we can care for in the local communities. But
Yep.
the Elizabeth Dole Act, and there's a longer name for it, but I'm just going to call it the Elizabeth Dole Act, is something that has been out there for several years that we've been advocating for and supporting, along with others across, the broader aging industry. And it just got passed and is being signed into law today. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so the House passed it. Well, the House originally passed it in November. Then it went to the Senate. They passed it just a couple days ago, went back to the House. So now it's supposed to be going to the president to get signed. And yes, I'm hoping it was signed today. I haven't actually caught up on all my news feeds, but it's such great news
Yep.
because that means contained in that big legislative work is an element that says a veteran should be able to get the same level of resources, funding available for the care that they need if they choose to receive that care in the home than if they go receive it in a facility. And it had been that there was disparate and that you could
Yeah.
get more benefit if you were in a facility and you received less benefit as a veteran if you stayed in your home. So we've been fighting for that and saying that makes no sense.
Yeah.
Because if you think about where you want to age as well, you got a long ways to go, but I will be thinking about where I want much sooner than you. It is, most people want to stay in their home and their familiar surroundings. And so that to me is just a huge win going into 2025 of just the advocacy work that we can do collectively, as well as in the local markets that individual owners are doing to talk to their own representatives. It makes a difference. And this industry is really going to help our country as a whole deal with this aging population, and really allowing and hopefully getting the support that people need to age gracefully wherever they call home.
It is such a wonderful thing, and it's so
Yeah.
long overdue. I'm sure there are going to be a ton of people that have personal experiences. Myself, I do with my grandfather. He was a veteran, and we put him in a facility, to take advantage of those veteran benefits. But man, he wanted to stay home, but it
Yeah.
just made more sense to have him in a facility. So man, that would have been wonderful to have that at that time. So many people are going to benefit from that. Love that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I do have a question for you, and we've kind
Okay.
of talked about this a little bit before, but really focusing on 2025.
Okay.
Um, let's see how I worded it. What future trends do you see kind of shaping the home care industry,
Mhm.
and how are we positioned to be part of those trends in the home care industry? And really just focusing on 2025.
Yeah, so I think, obviously everybody talks about the aging population, and, so many people are turning 65 every day. And
Yep.
so, yes, there is so much demand out there that there's not enough supply. And when we talk about demand and supply, demand is obviously the clients that can benefit from our services, and supply is the caregivers that we can hire
Mhm.
at the local office level to be able to provide that care in the home. So yes, there's so much demand, and so we're focusing on making sure we're that employer of choice. But another key trend that I see moving into 2025 is the technology trend. And a lot of it I see around things that we will be able to leverage in 2025. AI is a big buzzword, and AI is making a splash, and AI is here to stay. So artificial intelligence and the things that can use that kind of capability in order to support business in all different kind of industries. But when I think about our industry, I think AI is going to have a huge impact in healthcare, but in 2025, I can see AI helping our individual offices and us here at the corporate office from an efficiency perspective.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think in 2025, there's going to be things that as we in our own network as a right at home brand will be bringing forward capabilities that drives efficiency at the individual franchisee level, which is really important because you need to have that efficiency, because as your business is growing, right, your top line is growing, but your bill rates and your pay rates are going up,
Mhm.
right, to stay with the market. But your operating element, your operating expenses, you want to constantly try to keep those in line. And we know everything's getting more expensive. So that's where, how can we drive efficiency, what I call below the line? So efficiency in those operating expenses, because we think a lot every day about how do we help our franchise owners build sustainable, profitable businesses.
Yes.
And to do that, you have to think about those operating expenses. So I anticipate that there's going to be efficiencies that at the end of the day are going to continue to help feed a very healthy business model within the right at home family.
Okay, perfect. And a question came in as you were answering that question. I'll read it to you. It says, has Right at Home started to incorporate AI in any of its franchised locations?
Yeah, so I think AI is probably in places that you don't even know it's at, right? So there are AI capabilities that are already within the operating software that we have all of our franchisees use, and that can help with some of that caregiver matching and logic around that, or engagement with caregivers. And so you don't necessarily see it as AI, but it's really AI technology behind the scenes. And certainly that operating system is consistently looking at other ways to engage it. We are rolling out in 2025. Well, we've already started the process. It was a big initiative here in 2024, but a CRM solution across the network. And that uses some AI capability for engaging with the client and staying connected with the client, those sorts of things. And it can be
Yep.
used on the caregiver side as well. So there's workflow things that, again, use some AI technology.
Yep.
Here at the corporate office, we're starting to use AI technology to help with data aspects and extracting some of the data in a more efficient way that allows all of
Yeah.
our owners to have a good finger on the pulse of their business. So AI is such a broad thing, but it's getting infused into the fabrics of a lot of the different solutions or technologies that we all use today.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Thank you for that. A couple more questions for you. Thinking about our audience, people who are interested in potentially joining the Right at Home system, what is the number one thing that these individuals should be doing right now as they're researching potentially joining Right at Home?
Oh gosh. It would be hard for me to say just one thing. So one
Okay,
thing.
top three.
So I do think, it doesn't hit us lightly in terms of the decision that someone is making, right? About do they want to get into owning their own business? And if they want to own their business, do they want to get into home care of all things versus a plethora of options that are out there? And do they want to do it from a franchising model versus, just starting on their own? Now, certainly I'm very biased to franchising, and the statistics will tell you you have better odds of being successful in a franchise concept than just going on your own.
Yep.
But I think if I put myself in those shoes and I'm trying to think about, do I want to do this? First of all, I would say make sure that they're continuing to stay really engaged with the team member on your team that they're working with. So that development director that can help guide them and answer their questions, because ask all the questions, because we want, as a franchisor, we want to, if we award a franchise, we want to do it because it's a good match for you, the potential new business owner,
Yep.
in terms of you're passionate about the industry, you feel you understand it. I mean, obviously, you're not going to understand everything, but you're confident in who you're going to
Yeah.
get in business with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then likewise, we want to make sure that it's a good match, which is why we go through this full process, and ultimately it culminates in a discovery day
Mm-hmm.
where the candidate has an opportunity to engage with a lot of individuals from the corporate office, so that we can also make sure, because the last thing we want to do is we don't want to just take your money, right? We don't just want someone to write a check and say, hey, now I'm a right at home franchise owner. We want to have done all that due diligence to, as best as both parties can determine it, it's going to be a great, successful relationship, because it's a long relationship. So I think, sitting in that chair of, gosh, do I join? Think about what's the type of relationship and culture you want to have with that franchisor. Because I do think that when I think of what separates us, it's our culture, and
Sure.
it is how our passion is around helping our franchise owners build sustainable, profitable businesses and bringing all those best practices, but also recognizing that the owner themselves has the responsibility to, obviously execute in the local market. And so we want to make sure that they've got the tools and we can give them all the training in order to do that.
Yes.
So I would say think about the passion and who you want to do business with and
Yep.
why you're wanting to get into this business, because home care is 24/7, 365.
Yep.
But I will tell you, you will not find a better industry where you are touching lives in a really meaningful way.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Great advice. Okay. And a question came in, and I
Okay.
think that I can answer this question unless you know
Perfect.
the
Because
answer.
I was just gonna say, I ask you on this last one of the year.
Yep. So for our listeners, I'll read it out loud. It says, approximately how many franchisees do you approve per year? So if that question is brand new people joining the Right at Home system, on average, I would say between 25 and 30. The majority of those are brand new people that we welcome into our system or purchasing brand new territories. But then we also have a good number of people that join the Right at Home system as new franchise owners that purchase one of our resale opportunities. So if you're just talking about brand new owners that join the system any given year, I'd say approximately 25 to 30 new owners. Do you have anything to add to that, Margaret? I think
No,
I hit the nail on the head, didn't I?
you did. Yeah, that's right in your wheelhouse.
Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left. One more question that I did want to ask you, kind of a branching off of the last question that I asked you.
Yeah.
Pretend, okay, so we've got our listeners are interested in joining the Right at Home system, and a lot of them don't have any home care experience. It's an FAQ that we get often on the franchise development team. Gosh, I don't have any, home care experience or medical experience, and how on earth am I going to do this? Maybe just a little piece of advice for somebody who is kind of having that internal struggle of, should I do this because I don't have the experience, and what's it going to look like for somebody like me who doesn't have that experience after I've signed my franchise agreement? Because it'd be something that I would be afraid of, being a new business owner without experience joining a franchise system that's, the concept is new to me. So what's a
Yeah.
piece of advice that you can give to somebody who kind of has that internal anguish, if you will, like, should I do this because I don't have that experience?
Yeah, so I would say you've got 25 years of people making that leap in front of you, because we're going to celebrate 25 years in franchising. So the majority of our owners join the Right at Home network without experience in home care. They may have never owned a business before, but they've worked for big corporations, whatever the case may be, whatever their experiences. We always find ways to take that experience from the past and tie it to the new things that you'll learn.
Yeah.
And that's what the beauty of joining a franchise network is that we've got 25 years of experience in franchising, 30 years in the industry as a whole, to be able to lift you up and surround you with the support and resources that are going to give you the tools that you can execute in your local market. So we want to hold your hand from the minute you are interested in learning more about home care and engage with us as a brand. We want to hold your hand until years and years down the road, assuming that you decide to buy a Right at Home, that you take this great asset that you've developed and built and either pass it down generationally, to your kids, or you sell it, or whatever the case may be. So we've got the expertise, we've got the systems, we've got the best practices, we've got the processes that allow you, because we recognize that you're not going to come in and understand home care out of the gate. Even if you come from healthcare, it's still a different world. And we're here to help lift you up and make that really successful.
Yes. Okay. That was perfect. All right. So we're up on time. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners before we part ways here?
So I would just say, thank you, first of all, for listening to these recordings and for your interest in the Right at Home brand. Certainly, we are an extremely strong brand with so much opportunity in front of us. So you can't go wrong in terms of engaging with us further. But again, we want to make sure it's right for you. And then, because it is the end of the year, I just hopefully, if you're listening this before the end of the year, I just want to wish everybody a very happy holiday season. Whether, the seasons can sometimes be really happy or sometimes sad. We all go through different stages of life, but whatever it is for you, I just hope that it is filled with joy and love and happiness. And boy, we are excited for 2025.
Yes, we
Yeah.
are. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Margaret. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I appreciate you, and I know our listeners do as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too.
Okay. Have a great day. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.